This asks us to graph this exponential function g of x equals 2 to the x minus 1. So what you have to do, they want you to use transformations. They want you to remember the base graph, and so your base graph always goes through, here's your base, y equals 2 to the x. And if you remember that, if you make your little xy chart, let's go -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's start with 0. If I plug 0 in for x, what am I going to get for y? What's 2 to the 0? It's 1. So you always have 0, 1. It doesn't matter if that was 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. It's always you're always going to have that point 0, 1. Then if I plug in numbers, 2 to the first power, if I plug in 1, I get 2 to the first, which is 2. Plug in 2, I get 2 to the second, which is 4. Plug in 3, I get 2 to the third, which is 8. I keep doubling it.
So it's automatically
If I plug in 1/2, hold on. If I plug in, -1, that's 2 to the -1, and what's the negative power? It's 1 over 2. 2 to the -2 is 1 over 4. 2 to the -3 is 1 over 8. What's going to happen as I go this to the right? What's going to happen to my graph? It's going to grow exponentially. So it's going to go 2, 4, 8, and it's going to zoom up like this as I'm going to the right. It's going to zoom up. That's called the exponential growth to the right. And down here, what's going to happen as I get to -10, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's going to be 2 to the -10, which is 1 over 2 to the +10, which is like 0.00 something. It's super close to 0, but is it ever going to get to 0? No, it's not, because the asymptote is the line y equals 0. The x-axis is the asymptote. All right, so that's not the whole question. The question is, what's this graph right here? So and transformations, what does that -1 with the x do to it? When I subtract 1 from the x, what happens?
It shifts it.
It shifts it which way? It shifts it to the right. So if the transformation is happening with the x, it's shifting it right or left. If it's minus,
it's that way.
Right. For the x, if it's minus, it's shifting it to the right. So all of these points just shifted over 1. Doesn't really look very different, except your point is right here now. And your graph goes like this. The asymptote is still the same, and it just does like that. So that's your graph. So let me ask this. What if your equation was g of x equals 2 to the x minus 1 like that?
And it would just be...
What is this -1? How does that shift your basic graph, which had looked like this? How does that shift your graph right there? Notice that it's not with the x anymore, which means it's with the y. It's with the entire function. So subtracting 1 from the entire function does what to everything? It moves it down. Moves everything. Good. It moves everything down 1. So this point is here. The new asymptote is where?
Below the...
It's at y equals -1. And your graph does this now. Got it? So that's transformations, and there's a couple of the transformations that you can talk about. You can watch those videos later or ask other questions.
I don't get how this isn't the right answer.